Hi everyone from Kardec Radio, I'm Luis Sergio Marotta, and we are here today to speak a little bit about the situation we've been through with this quarantine times we in humanity have been living. And we are going to talk a little bit about a message from the Spirit, or by the Spirit Emmanuel, the spirit guide of the renowned medium Chico Xavier, the Brazilian medium. And when we do this, people, when we talk about Emmanuel, it's because not only because he's the guide, the Chico Xavier's guide, but because also his words are very, very wise in terms of any kind of attitude and perception for any people, any kind of people, any religion, right? Because we believe that the real Christic teachings have no nation, no borders, no flags. They are universal. They are useful to us here on earth and to any other creature anywhere else in the universe. So we're going to read this message by Emmanuel, right? It's in the book Our Daily Bread. It's a book, it's an award-winning book in the United States, and I could say here too in Brazil. And the name in the lesson is lesson 135. The title is Necessary Renewal. I'll read this lesson to us. And then after reading, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some parts of it. It says, "Do not quench the spirit." This is the epistle of Paul, the first epistle to the Thessalonians, 5:19. And Emmanuel comments, "When the apostle to the Gentiles wrote this exhortation, he did not mean that the spirit could be destroyed. Instead, he was trying to renew the mental attitude of those who were suffocating their higher spiritual tendencies." We often see people who go against their own conscience in order to avoid being labeled as spiritual. Nevertheless, incarnate souls are placed in the laborious learning experience in order to rise from the world as glorified spirits. This is the highest purpose of the human school. However, humans are still a long way from the great truth. They habitually prefer strict conventionalism, and only at much cost do they open their understanding to the realities of the soul. Actually, customs are powerful determining elements in the evolutionary process, but only when inspired by principles of a higher order. Therefore, we must not suffocate the seeds of the spiritually constructive life that sprout daily in our hearts under the influence of the Merciful Father. There are brothers and sisters who leave the earth through the same door of ignorance and indifference that they entered it. Thus, as disciples look back on the activities of the day, they should ask themselves, what have I accomplished? Have I accentuated the traits of the inferior individual of yesterday? Or have I developed the lofty spiritual qualities that I want to retain tomorrow? Well, dear friends from Kardec Radio, this is so important in the times we've been living. Why? Because these circumstances, and some spirits say that the circumstances are the action of God in benefit of the creature. Because circumstances are those situations in which we are caught red-handed. We don't know exactly what's going on, and we are obliged and pushed against the wall to do this or that way. These are circumstances, or circumstances are out of our control. And it's a sign of God's will in many circumstances, as I said. Look, When the apostle of the Gentiles, it was Apostle Paul, said, do not quench the spirit, according to Emmanuel in the first paragraph, right? It doesn't mean that he wants, the spirit could be destroyed, but that, as he says, Emmanuel says, he was trying to renew the mental attitude of those who were suffocating their higher spiritual tendencies. Well, we know there is a trinity, a spiritist trinity. It's God, Spirit, matter. God, creator, spirit creature, that diving into matter goes up to God again. So matter is a didactic material. If we mistake the matter, which is a means, right, with the target, with his God and the Spirit, of course, we will face circumstances to make us understand that the goal cannot be matter. Although matter is such an important thing, it's a means through which we're going to get there, right? Many times in this world, we mistake one for the other. So he continues to say, we often see people who go against their own conscience, spirit, in order to avoid being labeled as spiritual, to please society, because our society is not spiritual. Nevertheless, he says, incarnate souls, we are placed in the laborious learning experience in order to rise from the world as glorified spirits. We know it's very difficult for us to understand this, but many times the circumstances oblige us to look at ourselves in an inner, deeper way by many circumstances that can happen to oblige us, to force us to do that. It's because we do need. And we can understand the world needed that, can't we? The world really needed this kind of stop and think. Where are you going? Where are you going? What are we doing with our lives? So, we want to one day become glorified spirits. This is the highest purpose of the human school. That's why we are here. So we can do things here on earth. We should not spend our whole life just praying and worshiping. But on the other hand, if we do physical things with just physical purposes, we must be making a big mistake, and life will come here and there to correct that. So Emmanuel, in the third paragraph, he says, humans are still a long way from the great truth. Well, certainly. And he says, they habitually prefer strict conventionalism, and only at much cost do they open their understanding to the realities of the soul. We are paying one of these costs. We are certainly paying one of these costs, because we came to the highest apex of science, technology, that has brought to us lots of comfort, physical comfort, lots of healings, lots of healing for many cures for many diseases. But our soul, our mind, our emotions are devastatingly bad, terribly affected. Our spirits. Some days ago, there was some mass shooting everywhere in the world, in the United States and other places of the world, just like a habit. People that go around killing other people with no apparent reason. And we went on and on celebrating. We kept celebrating. Doesn't matter if people are dying, if souls are being quote unquote killed. Remember Jesus saying that, don't fear those who can kill your body, fear those who can kill your soul. But souls have been quote unquote killed. And with non-stop actions, we went on. So we believe that this is happening to make us stop and think. And of course, as many people all over the world have been concluding, to renew our true values in life. And the most important value, as Emmanuel is saying here, is the purpose, which is to become glorified spirits, to live a much better life, in much better places, or to make this place a much better place itself. So he says that we prefer the strict conventionalism because it's easier. Go to churches, to Spiritist centers, and kneel at some places and pray, and kind of release, right, our conscience from the heavy load that we sometimes fantasize that we are releasing from that we are getting them off our chest, but we are not. So we are now looking at ourselves, many of us inside our homes. Compulsory, it's a kind of compulsory thinking, compulsory meditation, right? And this is so important to us because, as he says, we must not suffocate the seeds of the spiritually constructive life. But of course, we need to understand that to have a spiritually constructive life, there will be obstacles. It's usually not the comfort zone. And many of us have been facing, with this quarantine, facing the discomfort situation we are having inside of us. This spiritual manual in another book, I'm not sure if this book is in English, called The Consoler. Question 238. Let me see if I can read this question for you, right? I'm not going to read the question. I'm going to read the reply. It's a question to number 238. But the reply, he says, in the reply, Emmanuel says, some centuries, this is a free translation, so please forgive me any mistake. Some centuries before Jesus Christ, right, the spiritual world, through the mouth of the prophets, exhorted man to the knowledge of himself. Now look at what he says. The gospel is the interior light, the inner light of that construction. And then he goes on. Well, only now does man get prepared for this knowledge, for this self-knowledge, through pain. So evangelization, in the collective sense of the word, for the era of fraternity, will only be able to become reality in the third millennium. So this is such an important message. He said that Christianity hasn't, and before in the first paragraph he said, Christianization of human souls hasn't gone beyond the first stage yet. You just got to know about Jesus Christ's words. But self-knowledge is very important. And we in this situation are really becoming forced to face ourselves, to look at ourselves in a much deeper way, because we're not doing so many things. We're not outside trying to run away from ourselves. Don't psychologists say that workaholic people, they usually are running from themselves in some ways? Of course, they are applauded socially because they're working hard, but on the other hand, they have a problem, and sometimes this problem ends up in hospitalization. People getting sick. So this is life trying to send us a message. Please stop and think. You will be able to go on working. We will be able to go on doing business. But how? The same way? If you go on the same way, maybe we'll face harder trials in the future. So Emmanuel is very interesting when he said, that the gospel is the interior light of this construction. Which construction? Self-knowledge. But why does he say that? Well, this is a very wise spirit. He doesn't write words just for the fun of it. He says that because if you go into self-knowledge without the ethical criterion that Jesus Christ brings to us, you may be deluding yourself. You may be just fantasizing that you're getting somewhere. Because suppose I discover I'm a very, very exceedingly greedy person. Oh, good. I found out by looking at myself that I'm a very greedy person. I've already heard this from people. And so what? And the person says, well, it's good, I know. And sometimes I have pleasure in being like that. But if it's under the light of this higher consciousness, values, you will think twice and say, look, I discovered that I'm exceedingly greedy, and this situation have been causing to me so much pain, and will still cause to me so much pain in near and long-term future. So I think I'd better change. I think I'd better do something to change. And what is one of the greatest tools for us to start changing? The honest, sincere prayer. According to the Spirit and Ray Luis, I think it's very interesting. The honest and sincere prayer is the basis for the personal renewal. Why is that? Because we've been dealing with proud reason for many, many centuries. And we don't have such a good judgment. Such an exact judgment of ourselves. So we need help from above. And that's why these times we've been living, these situations, we can pray to all of the people who have been suffering. Pray to discover ourselves more precisely and to heal ourselves from our defects and imperfections more effectively. That's a great opportunity, and we hope you, Kardec Radio friend, and many others will be able to be better after all this, because everything will pass. But we hope that this situation, can bring the best of us. Many of us, those who are departing, those who are suffering, those who are just at home, waiting for the situation to be past. But it's a great opportunity, and the spirits have been saying this to us for a long time. Back in the lesson, Emmanuel finished saying that, what can we ask ourselves in this self-knowledge? What have I accomplished today? Have I accentuated the traits of the inferior individual of today, of yesterday? Or have I developed the lofty spiritual qualities that I want to retain tomorrow? No hurry. Step by step. We need to be very patient with ourselves, right? Because there's another lie, a very religious lie. Those who want to be a saint the next day, when the next day comes and they discover they haven't become a saint, they say to themselves, oh, faith is not a pathway to me. And they just go on their lives attaching themselves to the conventional life, as it's in the first, the conventionalism, right? Practicing external religion. Spiritism and Christianity, for sure, hasn't come for this. This is past, in our opinion. Thank you so much for listening to us, right? I hope everybody can reflect, and then I hope everybody can pray and get from the higher realms of life hope, health, and inspiration. Thank you.